promised you guys I would try and come up with one of the cheapest loops I could possibly do, and I think I did it. Although there's still some pricing that we could sort of cut with this, but I feel like this is gonna be an interesting loop.
For those looking for a high-end custom gaming experience, look no further than Falcon Northwest. Falcon Northwest has been building PCs made for gamers for over 30 years with a focus on a true high-end gaming experience. Custom cases available only through Falcon Northwest feature state-of-the-art testing and design to ensure that every component is performing at their best through thermal imaging and rigorous lab testing designed and overseen by the Falcon Northwest founder himself. With a complete lineup of systems ranging from small to large, every Falcon Northwest system includes a 3-year warranty policy and a year of 2-way overnight shipping coverage, providing the ultimate peace of mind. To see all that Falcon Northwest has to offer, follow the sponsored link in the description below.
It's funny because I still made not some mistakes along the way, it's just maybe some stuff that I might have done a little bit differently after the fact. But we're gonna talk about all the pricing, the components here. I've pretty much, with the exception of these 3 things right here, I've never messed with this. This brand Dracena, I guess it's named after the plant. I've never heard of this brand before until I did Phil's water-cooled build where we used their compression fittings on the black rubber tubing, and they are pretty high quality feeling stuff. I mean, I don't know how, actually, I'm gonna take that back. I was about to say how hard is it to bake a fitting, but I've had some pretty bad fittings in the past that have been loose and wobbly, and I'm like, okay, that doesn't feel very confidence inspiring that my loop isn't going to leak. Anyway, so let's go through the parts that are here. I'm gonna be putting it in our open box build, even though the power supply is technically not from that build. That's from when we did the Lee & Lee crazy power supply, the Edge power supply, that has the connectors on the side. Well, technically the front extension down there. That's the only thing that's not a part of the build, but it's kind of keeping with the spirit of budget type of stuff. So the idea with this build, if you haven't seen it, we went to Micro Center. Everything that could be bought open box was, and we ended up saving enough money to just about cover most of the cost of our CPU in here, which is the 13700K. So I feel like this loop would be pretty much, like I said, in the spirit of that. Let's talk about the components. First of all, this block right here, it is a XGIN BX Quilinix. I don't know. It's $14.98, okay? I've used this block in the past, actually. So I'm taking a little bit of a risk that it's gonna work on our motherboard here, only because of the fact that this block came out way before LGA 1700. Now, everything I know about LGA 1700 is just the fact that the holes are a little bit wider than the other holes. So they have an elongated hole so it can fit younger and newer and older coolers alike in there. The height and all that's the same. It's AM4 and AM5 that have a different Z-axis height. Anyway, as you can see, this is a no frills package, absolutely no frills whatsoever. It's in an anti-static bag, bubble wrap tape. And I used this a long time, probably a solid 6+ years ago. I've used this exact block, and I think at the time it was $20. So if we account for inflation, and then it was 6 years ago, 20 bucks, and today in 2024's money, it's $14.98, it's gone down in price. Rightfully so, because it technically isn't listed as supporting the newer sockets. It does not come with thermal paste, by the way, so you're gonna have to add about $5 to the price of this stuff because I'll be using my own thermal paste. It's super basic, but I'm gonna tell you right now, the build quality of it actually feels pretty good. I remember back in the day, I used this on an X99 CPU or something like that and was shocked at the type of performance it was able to give me. If you look in there, it's just a basic old copper heat plate. There's no inlet, there's no outlet. It just flows across a cold plate that has square pillars in there, if you will. It's not even like a flow plate, if you will. It's just gonna go in there, swirl around, pick up heat and leave. It's also not very big. So I say that because and there is plastic on this, right? Yes. So it's pure copper, as you can see. Not the smoothest, best finish, but still, for $14.99 or $98, how picky are we gonna be? It still has more density to it than any AIO cold plate that you could technically get today, just about. It's thicker, it has more flow through it. In my opinion, in my past experience with this block, it is definitely able to perform well enough for what I think it'll be able to do with 13700K. Now you'll see it is a square cold plate, and it's probably barely going to cover, if not slightly smaller than the IHS on a 13700K. because remember, they're not square anymore, they're rectangle. However, it will cover everything that is directly above the die. As long as we can get full coverage above the die, which we know it will, because I've delated a bunch of them, this is going to get the job done. Now, the mounting hardware leaves some to be desired, but again, it gets the job done. You can see in there, it's got some plastic washers that go on either side of the motherboard, so you don't dig into the motherboard. It's just a screw and a spring. It is literally the threaded portion of the screw is the entire screw. So you're gonna wanna do your best to try and make sure the amount of like threads down the spring and the washer nut is not uneven, otherwise you can get the block to be uneven. So the hardest part about mounting that is gonna be getting it flat. But again, for $14.98, I'm really interested to see how that does. This is just regular old black rubber tubing. Like you can get this at any hardware store. This is about a meter of it. This was about 10 bucks. I put 15 bucks for pricing because if you buy it new, like on Amazon or something like that. And by the way, everything here was from Amazon, every single bit of it. The exception of the water, this is from our local grocery store. That's just distilled water. Anyway, so yeah, I put 15 bucks on there because you can order it online for about 15 bucks. It's just, this is a 3/8 by 5/8 tubing. So that means the inner diameter is 3/8 and the outer diameter is 5/8. And because we're using compression for this, you need to know the inner and outer diameter. Unlike rigid tubing, only the outer diameter of the tube matters. Inner diameter matters for the flex tubing as well. So for those fittings, we're reusing the same exact ones I used on Phil's build. I am a huge believer in this brand's fittings. The rest of this stuff, I don't know yet. I haven't looked at it, haven't tested it, but we're gonna find out today. The quality of their fittings to me is really difficult to match for the price point. It comes with a spare O-ring, which is for down here where it actually threads into the component. So that's always nice to see. Knurled finish, so easy to grip when you're tightening it. It's a single barb. So instead of having a dual barb, it's short and it's a single barb. That might be the only complaint I have. If it could be a little longer and have dual barbs for extra grip, but we have a compression fitting on here. So the barb is for sealing, by the way, not just grip. Having two of them would just be a little bit extra seal on there. But by having the compression clamp down on that, having it slide off would be very unlikely. The weight of it is weighty, so I believe this is gonna be plated brass, more than likely. Very unlikely that it's copper. It's more than likely brass. Almost every fitting is brass. And we got 6 of them, right? Yes, 6 of them for $23.99, making them about $4. So just call it $4 a fitting. That is crazy. And it has a 1-year limited warranty. I don't know what the warranty would be on. They give you a spare O-ring. It's a solid piece with a collar. I don't know what else could go wrong with it. Maybe I shouldn't tempt fate. An extra expense in this that really isn't necessary at another $23.99 for 6 fittings are 90-degree rotatable fittings. And the reason why I like these 90s is because of the fact that sometimes it's easier to work around various components and stuff to just have a 90 coming off a component. You could save 24 bucks probably if you plan out your loop well enough and don't need them. But so now we have rotatable angled 90-degree fittings on there. Okay, so there's our fittings for what, $48? We got a total of 12 fittings compared to many of the boutique higher end brands that want to charge you sometimes $25 a fitting. Fans. This is just the Antec F12 fans. They're basic. This is a 5-pack. This is where you could save some money. I forgot to buy fans. So I dug into my own stash. I actually did buy these on Amazon in January of 2023, by the way. That's how long I've had these fans. They're just basic old 120 millimeter DC fans. They're not even PWM, they're DC. So gonna have to plug these into something. Hopefully the motherboard has enough headers, so I'm gonna be adding a couple bucks for a splitter to have a 3-way splitter because we do have a 360 rad on here. There's a basic old fan that we need to push air through here. There are fans on Amazon that are better for 3-packs for like $10. Not even kidding. You cut out the RGB and a bunch of the other fluff that brands of fans or fan brands like to add, you can actually get them pretty cheap. Now it feels cheap. They're not the sturdiest fan, they're flexible and such, but we're just trying to push air through our rad and we're trying to do it as cost efficient as possible. There are other fans that you could do, but I did put the full price of what these were, which was about, I think, $23 or somewhere around there, in the price of this. Yeah, like I said, you could cut another like $13 out of that by going with an even cheaper brand. All right, the Radiator. This is a 360 millimeter by 30 millimeter radiator. Very standard size. Thank goodness it comes with hardware, because not all radiators have the same threads. Here is our 1-year limited warranty on everything again. Gives you a QR code with all the Dracaena stuff. No, Dracaena did not sponsor this video. I paid for all of this. That's actually a pretty quality looking rad. Holy cow. So it is a copper rad. It is not aluminum. Do yourself a favor, if you're shopping on the cheap, make sure you're paying attention to the material used. You do not want to use an aluminum radiator. Yes, AIOs have aluminum radiators in them. However, they have very special formulated fluids in them, usually, that are designed to deal with galvanic corrosion, which is what's going to happen when you have mixed metals in your loop. In this instance, we would have, well, copper, right? Copper there, whatever the coat, like the finish is on this, I don't know if it's anodizing, powder coating, or whatever, that's on the fittings there. Whatever metals are existing inside our reservoir here. So if we were to add, and it could be nickel, there could be nickel plated stuff, there could be different compounds to the nickel plating itself, or different alloys and stuff in there. Same thing with the copper. These alloys are not going to match. They came from 2 different facilities. So all of those mixed metals lead to corrosion, especially if you add aluminum. Aluminum like just expedites that process. It's just the metallurgy of it. So avoid aluminum. Don't use aluminum unless all your components are aluminum. And then even then, you don't want to use just straight distilled water. You'd want a formulated fluid for mixed metals. But I'm actually genuinely surprised at the quality of this. This feels quality. Even the end tanks are pretty looking. Like some radiators are just ugly looking. Now look, for the price, this was $69.99. It's not the cheapest 360 I could find, but it was the cheapest 360 that didn't seem like I was sacrificing build quality for it. A lot of the reviews were solid on it. The anodizing on it, or the paint, powder coat, whatever it is, it's not anodized, it's not aluminum, but the paint and powder coat is very even. It doesn't look blotchy in areas. Not really a fan of their logo, and it's actually a little bit crooked. What's actually crooked is not just like, it's a plaque. It's not a sticker, it's a plaque. I feel like the rectangle itself that's like stamped into the side cover is crooked, but it's okay, because we're putting it in this way, I think. I'm gonna put it in this way so that the tubes are in the back, which means we won't see it. We got short screws and long screws so our fans can mount directly to our radiator, and then we can mount the radiator to the underside of the case. I waited for the best for last because pumps and reservoirs, they can get pretty dang pricey. This guy right here, also from Dracaena, is a 250 milliliter, and when it says 250 ml, that's talking about how much fluid the reservoir itself can hold. It's not millimeters long or anything like that. I've seen people get confused on that. It's how much fluid the res can hold. This is also $69.99, but it is a combo, and I am really curious to what the quality of this is going to be, because it is not expensive by pump res combo standards, but it looked nice on the picture. We have, okay. So they include a Molex to RGB header that's also a controller. There's a little inline controller on there. That way, if you don't have RGB in your system, you can at least control the lighting on the reservoir. Okay, here is, it's actually not very bad looking. It's actually not bad looking at all. So it's got a DDC style pump. Like it's gonna be like, it's not like a D5, it's like more like a 12 volt DDC, which I'm okay with on this kind of loop. The reservoir actually is pretty solid looking, to be honest. Here's another bracket right here. It does have RGB in there. It does use Molex, unfortunately, but that's okay. I mean, we can deal with that for the price. And then we have, wow, we have a bunch of extra stuff. Holy cow. Okay, so we get mounting rings, which are designed to go on here, I would assume. We have a vibration pad, which we can use to, it's double-sided sticky tape also, which I believe just goes on the bottom if we want to stick it on the bottom somewhere. But it's a thick anti-vibration pad. Extra O-rings, there's like a theme. I love that they provide extra O-rings. A lot of water cooling companies, even ones charging you $200, $300, $400 for their component, do not include extra O-rings. These do. And then, as you can see, we have our mounting hardware here. This actually seems like a pretty decent quality piece, like the acrylic. It's nice and smooth. All the edges are deburred. They have a nice chamfer to them so that we can get a good seal with our O-ring. Nothing sharp to cut our O-rings. Unfortunately, the little plaque is kind of scratched already. Like I don't know if you can see it in the light, maybe people can get a close up, but it's scratched, you know, whatever, it is what it is. But that's gonna be on the back side anyway. This is the side that's gonna be facing us. So it has this little kind of a satin badge, which looks nice. Obviously that's our inlet right there. Do we already have O-ring down in there? I wanna make sure these are not supposed to be installed. Nope, O-ring is down in there. Interestingly enough, this inner piece right here is also threaded. So what I was expecting to see was some sort of a pickup tube or something. But, and the reason why people will, brands will put little pickup tubes, even short ones down there, is it keeps it from picking up any potential sediment that could sort of fall down in here. Then it allows sediment to just collect at the bottom when we do your loop cleaning. It's easier to clean it there than having it cycle through the loop. You can see it also does have a little kind of a interesting shaped push down tube. I've never seen anything like that. And that's gonna push out to the side rather than straight down. Because if you're returning to the top of the reservoir, which is what that fitting is actually for right there, then it needs to push down into the fluid, otherwise you get a weird waterfall effect, or surface tension could just make it run down along the side. And then the other one is a fill, like you could fill it from that right there. Also bleed air out if you need to. It's a pretty solid feeling kit though for 69 bucks, and they come in different sizes. So the total on all of this, including the water, the only thing it doesn't include is like the $5 or whatever you would need for thermal paste, because unfortunately the block doesn't give you any. But the total cost for all of this, minus the $5 for the thermal paste I have to add, is $239.92. And that's including the overpriced fans, because it's all I have on hand right now. Now, like I said, if you didn't need to use 90s anywhere, you could cut $24 more off of that, making it just over $219, something like that. I have two pump reservoir combos similar to this in Skunkworks that are glass and RGB and beautiful and all that. I can guarantee you one of them costs what this entire loop does. So, all right, let me build it, let me put it together in here, and then we'll do some temperature tests and see how it does with a 13700K. And we'll talk about whether or not this was worth it. Because at this point, we are more expensive than many AIOs. Okay, many AIOs cost less than $239, almost all of them, 360 AIOs I should say anyway. There are many air coolers out there that cost less, that would do just as good of a job. However, this is expandable. We can expand upon this by adding our graphics card in the loop and such. And I think overall, the performance hindrance is gonna come down to whether or not this block, which was designed many moons ago versus today's blocks, at $15, can handle the type of punishment 13th and 14th gen can provide. I don't think it looks too bad considering the fact that it's all such really like thrown together stuff. It wasn't even designed to have an aesthetic to it, but clearly that matte black works everywhere, right? The reservoir actually looks really, really good. I'm not a fan of the fact that it makes you have to use the return on the top. I would like to have had a fitting or something on the side so I don't have to use the push down. Now you'll notice in the top here what I did is I also have a 90-degree fitting on here. I had 6 of them, might as well use them, that I ended up putting a cap on. The fan is turning very fast. I want to point out the reservoir also does not come with a spare cap because you have 2 holes in the top and then 1 on the output. So you're gonna have 1 return and 1 output, and then a 3rd hole, which is ideally used for filling or something like I did, but they didn't give you a cap for that. So let's add $5 more to the budget, because let's say I had to buy a cap on Amazon. So now we're at $244.92 or whatever that was. There was something else. Oh yeah, we used the MX4 thermal paste, and that's also $5 on Amazon. So I didn't do like Kingpin Extreme or anything crazy, which is like a $40 thermal paste. We used a $5 MX4. So now we're up to $249. So $250 for this loop. Now, I'm gonna tell you right now, the weak link in here is the CPU block. Absolutely guaranteed. Getting it mounted and getting it flat is difficult because of the fact that there is there's no back plate on the back, like I showed you. It just pulls the holes. Now, if you over tighten it, it will bow the board. What that will end up doing is pulling the CPU away from the block. So we've already been messing around and doing some testing, and I was getting 100C instantly under load. That's because we were getting a very poor mount. I've got it sort of flat now, at least as flat as I think I can get it. And you'll see with the temperatures, but there's another block I'm gonna be testing that's only $5 more than this one. It's at $19, but truth be told, that was the block I actually ordered for this whole thing, and I didn't pay attention to the fact that it was gonna take 2 weeks to arrive. So I got this one in a pinch to be able to test the rest of the components, and it's performing exactly as I sort of expected in that it's really not gonna be any better than an air cooler, we'll show you. Right now it's installing TimeSpy because I wanna use that as a CPU test as well, not just Cinebench's AVX instruction, which is gonna push it way harder than any normal use case would. But I feel like the TimeSpy CPU test is more indicative of a multi-threaded workload than doing something that's like just straight AVX instruction. I do want to point out this MSI board though that we're using is actually pretty terrible when regarding using the Intel defaults. Even though we updated the BIOS, they don't tend to be there. It still sort of wants to push it to 4,096 watts available to it. So we did go in and manually set limits at 253, so it can't possibly exceed where the CPU's intended to go, which is what a lot of our complaints were about various motherboards and stuff of brands pushing it too high. Okay, here we go. Stress test our R23 Cinebench, way harder than anything real world would be. We're still at 5.3 all core, no throttling, 87, 86, 87. We're at 226 watts, which is below our 253 limit. Remember, we are at 105C, well, technically 100C is where we start to hard throttle, but we're under that, obviously. There's a 30,584. So we beat a Threadripper W2990WX. If you have one of those, you just got beat by an i7 with a $250 loop. But anyway, I digress. That's way worse than anything we would ever see. I mean, look right now, the package is at 32 as we're chilling right here. Our hottest core hit, looks like 88. Yeah, hottest P core was 88, hottest E core was 74. And again, those temps, yes, they're no better than putting like a Noctua or something on there, which would be cheaper than this loop entirely. Well, or about roughly the same. There's definitely air towers out there that are cheaper than this loop that would perform better. That's the fault of our $14.98 water block, not the $249 loop. So, like I already mentioned, there's another block coming that will be better, and maybe I'll even check not just like the $20 block that I'm getting, because I was trying to do like super budget, but I'll find like maybe like a realistic like $45, $50 block that maybe gives us some good quality to add to this loop, making it still less than $300, but giving us a really good result in our cooling versus a $14 piece of copper. But so far, I'm actually impressed with the fact that it can, once you get it to sort of lay flat, laying flat's very important, but it's actually done better than 88C. I expected worse. I mean, yeah, AIOs could do just as good of a job. But this is about making sure we have an upgrade path and such, which we do. We can change the block. We can upgrade the GPU in the loop. We have a 360 rad, we have more than enough. We could add another radiator to the loop if we wanted. I could put another one down here technically or something. All right, let's go ahead and see what a more realistic type of workflow looks like by using Cinebench, or not Cinebench, but TimeSpy. So for those of you that may have noticed, my processor was at 144% utilization, 155% on the P cores and 123% on the E cores. That's a bug with Hardware Monitor. I've had people email me about that asking, what's the deal with this? Is this a percentage of overclock? No, it's actually just a bug in Hardware Monitor. Okay, here we go. So there's 43, 42, 51, 46, 45, 61, 65, 54, 63. Actually did a lot better than I thought it would. So maybe I'll go ahead and do extreme because that didn't really push the CPU that hard at all. Okay, it just doesn't care. I mean, there's more wattage there. It's 151 watts, right? 56C, 65, that's more realistic. 57, 71, 60, 70. Yeah, I mean, that's a more realistic, like real world test. That's the kind of temps we'd more than likely see while gaming and stuff. But you know what though, ultimately, I think I expected worse out of this block, to be honest, because it was a backup. Like I said, it was a filler because I messed up. The block I ordered won't be here for another week. And I'm like, dang it, I can't wait that long because we've got other things happening in between now and then. So I'll test that block when it comes later. And then, like I said, I think I'll do another test of like a more realistic, like $50 block or something. Maybe check out like Barotech or something like that that has more affordable blocks. They're actually intended and designed for LGA 1700. But not bad, honestly. I think it could be worse. The reservoir and the pump combo, I'm extremely impressed with the build quality of it. Not impressed with their mounting mechanism. So the mounting brackets, as you can see, I've got them kind of jimmy rigged on there. They're intended to mount to 120 millimeter fans. The problem is the Elancool 216 I'm using here has 180 millimeter front fans. Actually no, they're 160s, I think. Yeah, they're 160s. So they have provisions for 120s, 140s, and 160s, which is really unique. So because I didn't have fans that I bought for this, changing out those fans would then change the price of the loop. So I have one bracket coming off one side and one bracket coming off the other, and then there's like a zip tie holding it, but it's still screwed in. It's just I needed it tied in more securely, but it's working perfectly. My biggest drawback to it is that fact that there's no like return port on the bottom of the pump. I don't like that it has to come in only on the top. Everything else though, the fittings worked exactly as I expected because I've used them in the past. The radiator's build quality is pretty good. As far as I can tell, I looked down inside, I could see where there was actually a flow path where fluid had been flowing through it. So it's clear that they do at least a leak test and a pressure test. It also looks like they might have done some sort of cleaning in there because I can tell where there's a little bit of rainbowing and stuff, which typically is from like the heat and stuff they use when they do the flux melting. So they heat the whole rad, the flux will flow, and then it solders all the rows on the end tanks. It looks like they did a cleaning on that because when a radiator hasn't been cleaned, or at least a flush, you can see a lot of granular type of material in there, and that's not at present at all. And if it were, we would actually kind of see it floating through the reservoir over time, but the reservoir is pretty clear. It hasn't run long enough for it to really turn dirty, but time will tell whether or not that's dirty or not. Pretty impressive the fact that you could actually build for $250 a completely custom open loop. Question is whether or not it's worth it if you're only gonna cool your CPU when much cheaper AIOs that have just as good a build quality exist. So that's where you get it. Same thing with air cooling. There's air coolers out there. Obviously the Noctua D15 is like extremely popular, which would perform just as good, if not better even, on this CPU than that block. The question is going to be, once I change that block out, then how well does it do? And then we'll probably have to do another further test after that where we throw a GPU in the loop and see how the whole loop does, because now we're beyond the realm of what an air cooler and an AIO can do, which is the whole point of an open loop. You can change the parts out, you can expand it, typically has better build quality, it's serviceable, and that's some of the benefits to that. All right guys, I'm gonna get on out of here. Hope this has taught you something. I'm still a little flabbergasted at the fact that this exists because I tried to do this back in 2013 and $300 did not get me anything near this quality. So, all right guys, thanks for watching. As always, we'll see you in the next one.